Hi, I'm David Zuckerman. I'm the former Lieutenant Governor of Vermont. I also served in the House of Representatives as well as the Senate for a combined 18 years in Vermont. I'm going to talk a little bit about a landmark piece of legislation that Vermont passed back in 2000. I was in my second term in the legislature. I think maybe worked on it in 99 and 2000. And that bill was called Civil Unions. And civil unions was the precursor to marriage equality, which Vermont passed in 2008. But it was the first piece of legislation anywhere in the country that passed in a state assembly to extend most of, nearly all, of the rights and responsibilities of marriage to same-sex couples and partnerships. And the interesting thing about the dynamic of that situation in terms of the legislature was that we had a strong Democratic majority in both the House and the Senate. There were then 4 of us progressives in the House. And the real debate for passage of the law was both getting a handful of Republicans on board, but also a much larger group, I think it was around 10 to 15, what were called blue dog or moderate Democrats. In today's terms, they would be the Joe Manchins and the Kyrsten Sinemas of the world that people might be familiar with in Washington, holding up some of the great legislation there. And those folks were not particularly supportive of civil unions, but they knew from their Democratic leadership they eventually needed to vote yes. But Democratic leadership was also over a barrel because they had to give in to any adjustments to civil unions that this group of legislators, the Blue Dogs, would ask for. And the Judiciary Committee had done a lot of work, had come up with a bill called Civil Unions to write into law all the different places from medical to legal to probate issues and end of life issues with same-sex couples. And the bill was more or less ready to move, but this group kept saying, well, we want to put in a little piece of language that really does make it more about how marriage is for a man and a woman, and this is not quite marriage. And we called those mini DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act language, and other pieces. And they kept finding places or being given places by certain lobbyists to insert further erosions to how equal civil unions was to what we all wanted with marriage equality. And the speaker was sort of stuck, always had to approve those. And this went on for a number of weeks. And eventually I met with the 4 progressives or the 3 other progressives, and we decided that at some point eroding how close civil unions was to marriage equality, the other way, and how far civil unions was getting pulled farther and farther from equal, that we were becoming uncomfortable voting for the bill. So we strategized, and we met with, after we came up with our plan, we met with the lead organizers and lobbyists and activists for marriage equality and civil unions, which were Beth Robinson and Susan Murray, who were 2 legal experts who had debated the case in front of the Supreme Court of Vermont to establish the precedent as to why we needed to pass the law. And we told them that we understood the hard position they were in, where the speaker would come to them and say, you need to accept this terrible amendment or else we get no bill. And so they were sort of forced to keep accepting things that they didn't want because they had no leverage. And what we brought was leverage. We said to them, the next time the speaker comes to you, tell the speaker that the 4 progressives have said, this bill has been eroded enough. And if it continues to get eroded, then you will lose our 4 votes. And therefore, you won't have enough votes to pass the bill because it was going to pass by just a handful of votes. And what came after that, within about a week, was notice that the bill was going to be voted out of committee with no more changes. Now, one can never say that was the only reason, but certainly it gave then, when they told the speaker that, I was not in the room, so this is conjecture, but that gave the speaker the authority and the ability to say to those blue dog Democrats, we've eroded as much as you can. If we erode more, we're also not going to get the bill because these 4 legislators have said they'll vote no. And so by just 4 votes out of 150, we were able to leverage no more erosion to civil unions. And I tell this story because I think it's really important to recognize how just a few votes can make a significant difference, particularly when the legislation is right on the cusp of passing or not. So that's a Vermont example. Be strategic and also get some more good votes elected.